Hello and thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk about rider aids such as ABS and traction control as opposed to rider skill, and the importance of developing your skills and, as part of that, your knowledge of understanding of how motorcycles work in order to become a better rider and of course a safer rider as well. So as you can see, it's a beautiful winter's day here in Northumberland in the north of England. It's the middle of winter and we've had some horrible weather just recently, but we get occasional beautiful days like this. It is very cold, but look how bright and beautiful this is. So I've taken the opportunity to jump on my bike and get out for a ride. As you can probably see, I'm riding my Triumph Scrambler 1200, and this is what has actually prompted what I'm talking about today. I own many bikes, 7 at the moment actually, and this is the only one of my bikes that has ABS and traction control and these kind of rider aids. None of my other bikes have these rider aids, and so I was just reflecting on how when I jump on any of my other bikes, I never feel worried or insecure because I don't have those rider aids there. So this is probably because I've been riding for over 40 years and I grew up on bikes without these rider aids, and as many riders of my age, my generation, I progressed up gradually through more powerful bikes and learnt my art, if you like, learnt my craft of riding through progressing up through bikes that got bigger, better performance. And of course, that was in the days when I think the roads were probably safer. There was a lot less traffic around. Cars were less powerful, so they were going less fast. I think there were a lot less inattentive drivers around those days as well. So if you compare that to these days, we've got a lot of younger riders who have not had the benefit of that experience. We also have many mature riders who are returning to riding after a long break. And all of these riders are, jumping on very high performance bikes. Today's bikes are much higher performance than the bikes that I grew up on and learnt on. And so, because of that, there's been a drive by authorities, by governments, to introduce features which improve the safety of motorcycles. It is a sad fact that it is a lack of rider skill that underlies many motorcycle accidents. Even when the motorcyclist is not at fault, a lack of riding skill, and just generally I would advocate doing as much rider training and improving your skills as highly as possible. Just passed into County Durham, by the way. Anyway, it's this lack of rider skills that is underpinning this drive for more technology on motorcycles. The European Commission and here in the UK government, they have an explicit mission to reduce the number of road traffic accidents. And they have a number of ways in which they're attempting to do this, but one of them is to try and make vehicles safer, not just motorcycles, of course, any vehicles. And the way that they see as being best to achieve this is to reduce rider error. Therefore, the more control they can take away from the rider and automate through rider assistance systems, the safer motorcycles will be in the eyes of the people who are making these changes, implementing these changes, and the legislation that's driving these changes. Therefore, there is a whole industry of people working to develop and implement new technologies which will reduce the human input into riding in the hope of reducing human error and thereby reducing accidents. And so the challenge, as seen by the people who are developing these new technologies, is to try and improve motorcycle stability. Motorcycles are understood to be inherently unstable vehicles, unlike four-wheel vehicles. And by that I mean, if you stop your motorcycle, get off it and walk away, it will fall over. And the same can't be said of a car, four-wheeled vehicles. So motorcycles are seen as inherently unstable vehicles. Now, this is where some of the physics comes in, because the stabilization of motorcycles is dependent upon two mechanisms. And you will know this as a rider, even if you don't explicitly know this, instinctively you will know this. If you travel at sufficient speed, then the motorcycle's wheels act as gyroscopes. And those gyroscopes then give stability to the bike. And we've all seen situations on the racetrack, for instance, GP bikes, where the bike's got into a wobble, it's thrown the rider off, and then the bike has continued perfectly stable in a straight line because the wheels are creating that gyroscopic force which is stabilizing the bike. And it's only when the bike slows down so that gyroscopic forces are reduced that the bike then begins to wobble. And then at lower speeds, and again you will know this from your own riding experience, the stability of the bike at low speeds is determined primarily by the rider moving the handlebars about and positioning their body. If you've ever tried any sort of low speed riding skills, you'll know what it's about. You're constantly adjusting the handlebars, adjusting your balance across the two foot pegs. Now, something else that is interesting is that both of these mechanisms depend on sufficient friction between the tyres and the road. You need that friction there to help stabilise the wheels. So if the available friction is limited, and if you exceed that friction limit, then the motorcycle will become unstable again. Probably leading to a crash. And this is particularly true with cornering, and I'm going to talk about cornering specifically in a moment. But again, you may have personal experience of this, so you'll know what I'm talking about. You're riding along, the gyroscopic forces of the wheels keeps your bike stable, but then if you lock up your wheels by over braking, then you immediately lose that gyroscopic effect. And obviously you're losing traction on the road, and that's when you go into a skid, which, unless you're able to recover that very quickly, will probably lead to you coming off. As soon as you lock up those wheels, that stability goes, and you feel the steering go light. When you lose that traction, you feel the steering go light because you're losing that gyroscopic stability. Now, this is where the problem lies. Many riders, less experienced riders, they don't have the reaction and the riding skills to be able to recover from something like that, particularly if they're panic braking. They're pulling the brakes on, and the last thing they're going to do is release that brake if they're panicking. And this is where ABS comes in. This is why ABS has been introduced, because ABS intervenes to unlock the wheel when the rider either can't or won't, in order to keep that wheel rotating, so you don't lose that gyroscopic stability and you don't lose that traction on the road. So, let's talk in a little bit more detail two essential aspects of motorcycle stability, because this is at the heart of what motorcycling is all about, and that's cornering and braking. I want to talk in more detail about each one of those. So an obvious way in which motorcycles differ from cars is that they lean when cornering, and this puts a complex set of dynamic forces into the play, and the physics of this are very interesting. In fact, when I edit this video, what I'll do is I'll put the formula on the screen, so it should be appearing on the screen now, which shows you the formula shows you the different forces and the interplay between the different forces when you're cornering. So let me explain this if I can remember it off the top of my head. So when a motorcycle is cornering, there are different forces, well, 6 different forces, which means in effect 6 different variables which impact on the level of lean that is required into that corner. Now, the 6 forces are the centrifugal force that's generated through the act of cornering, the weight of the motorcycle and the rider, so the combined weight of the bike and the rider, the lateral acceleration, gravity comes into play here as well, cornering radius, so basically how tight a turn you're trying to make, and finally velocity, how fast you are riding. So the equilibrium of lean angle that is created by the interplay of these 6 different variables is very unstable, because any small change in any of these applied forces can create a change in the required lean angle, which then could, very quickly and often does lead to a crash. You're probably already aware that the lean angle of the bike in the corner is controlled through the handlebars through what's known as counter steer. And the way this works is that at speeds of greater than, it's approximately 20 miles per hour. If you're going faster than 20 miles an hour, then you can apply counter steer. Less than 20 miles an hour, and you have to turn the handlebars the direction that you're going. But at speeds of approximately 25 miles per hour or faster, there's this gyroscopic coupling of the front wheel that connects the handlebar movement and the lean angle in a stabilizing manner. So for example, if you turn the motorcycle to the left, if you want to turn the motorcycle to the left, you need to lean the motorcycle to the left, and to do that you either push, and there's debate over which you should be doing here, but you either push on the left hand handlebar, so you push the left hand handlebar away from you, push that forward, which causes the bike to fall over to the left, and then you will turn to the left. Or of course the other is you can pull on the right hand handlebar, and again I say there's debate about which of those you should be doing, or whether it's a bit of both. Anyway, that's the mechanism. So if you're already in a left hand turn and you want to tighten up that turn, then you need to push a little bit more on the left hand bar to cause the bike to lean a little bit more to the left. And of course the opposite applies if you're turning right. So when you're coming out of a corner and you want to straighten up, this is where the interplay between those different dynamic forces come into play, because you can straighten the bike up. If, say, so you're in a left-hand corner, you're leaning over hard to the left, then if you push on the right-hand handlebar, that will cause the bike to, the angle of lean to reduce, basically the bike stand up. But you may have also experienced that you can do this by accelerating. So as you open the throttle to accelerate out of the corner, remember I said, velocity was another of the variables. That increases your velocity, and that also causes the bike to stand up. So that's a perfect example of the interplay of the different forces that I mentioned a moment ago in that formula for the angle of cornering lean. Another complicating factor with some bikes, and I remember I've owned several Moto Guzzi's, and that's the turning force of the engine. So with Moto Guzzi's, with the engine turning, if you open the throttle, you get the centrifugal force from the engine as well, and because that's spinning in a lateral movement, that can pull the bike to the left or right whether you open or close the throttle. So that on some bikes, not all bikes, that's another complication in there. So what's the point about talking about the physics? Well, it is that if you understand the interplay of these different forces, then you can experiment and play around with them to improve your riding skill. So for example, if you open the throttle and start it to accelerate in the corner, this will cause the bike to try and stand up, which will reduce the cornering radius, and you'll start to run wide on the corner. So if you look at the formula that I showed you a minute ago, you can see that you can, for example, add more counter steer by applying more pressure on the handlebar to keep the bike tucked into that corner and keep your corner radius, turning radius tight, even though you're accelerating. Probably the most common problem that riders have is that applying the brakes in a corner also causes the bike to stand up, and that's the cause of many accidents. Bikers go into a corner too fast, panic, brake, stands the bike up, they run wide and come off the road, or even worse, hit a vehicle coming in the other direction. And this is once again because the delicate equilibrium in that formula has been disturbed when you apply the brakes. But once again, if you understand that formula, then you can counter that change in one variable by changing another variable yourself as the rider through rider input. So again, in this case, braking hard when you're leaning into a corner, you need to apply more counter steer in order to keep that radius tight, to counter the desire of the bike to stand up through the braking force. Of course, as I mentioned a minute ago, below speeds of about 20 miles an hour, things change. The gyroscopic effect doesn't work, and therefore the rider needs to turn the handlebars and move the body weight around in order to keep the bike stable, keep it upright. And this is why low-speed riding competitions are just such fun. If you've never done it, you need to have a go. Just get out with a mate or two and have a low-speed competition. Basically who can do 100 meters in the slowest time. It's really good practice in terms of maintaining your balance and stability on the bike. Okay, so let's talk about braking stability. And again, motorcycles are significantly different to cars. The braking systems of four-wheel vehicles are commonly designed to lock the front wheels first. So in the case of a car locking the front wheels, then the vehicle side slip angular motion is stabilized by the rear wheels because they generate side forces that compensate for this side slip angle. However, this just won't work on a motorcycle. As I've already explained, the gyroscopic stabilization of a motorcycle stops when the front wheel is locked. And what's more, when you lock the front wheel, that usually creates a capsizing motion. And if you've ever been in the unfortunate position to experience this, you know that these combined forces just cause the motorcycle to drop in a fraction of a second, and you'll be on your backside skidding down the road. This capsizing motion of the front wheel can be caused by locking it, or it can be caused by simply losing grip on a slippery road. Now, all of this physics is very interesting of itself, but really I wanted to talk about how this contributes to motorcycle accidents, and therefore why ABS systems are now being universally fitted on motorcycles. So, there have been many studies which have looked at the statistics of motorcycle accidents from many different countries, and sorry, I'm just looking for an opportunity to overtake this guy. We'll get past him in a moment. Here we go. Oh, I love the torque on this bike. Anyway, so as I was saying, studies of motorcycle accident statistics are very, very similar across studies, and approximately 60% of motorcycle fatalities occur when there is a known loss of control in an accident. That's to say, the rider loses control of the motorcycle. And it's calculated that poor braking technique contributes to at least 10% of all motorcycle accidents. So when you see these statistics, then it's easy to understand why governments and other bodies seeking to improve road safety want to mandate the fitting of ABS systems on all motorcycles. And I should say at this point, this is no way a polemic against ABS systems. I'm not anti-ABS systems at all. I just feel that an ABS system is not a substitute for good rider skill. And ABS systems, I have to say, are getting better all the time. So if you remember the formula that I shared with you earlier, it sets out the different forces that are at play during cornering. Today's ABS systems not only prevent wheels from locking, but they're also able to sense for lateral acceleration and lean angle, and in doing so apply a more sophisticated intervention during cornering. So it's difficult to argue against the benefits of these developments in ABS systems, and I would always argue that it's better to have a skilled rider than to have a bike full of electronics to support an unskilled rider. And for me, it's very much a part of the pleasure of riding. Every time I'm out on my bike, I'm working on my rider skills, my braking skills, my cornering skills, all aspects of my riding, and trying to, improve my riding. Even after 40 odd years of riding, just working on it all the time, big part of the pleasure for me. However, from my many years of working as a motorcycle riding instructor and undertaking a lot of motorcycle training, I'm painfully aware that the roads will always be full of unskilled riders. One thing that makes me very sad is that the majority of riders these days seem to be middle-aged men. A lot of them, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, are middle-aged men who are returning to riding after a very, very long break. And something that comes with middle-aged men is an ego which prevents them from admitting that they're not very good riders. This is certainly not true of everybody, and many do get back on bikes and recognise that they need rider training and take it, and I would really advocate doing that. But sadly, there's a lot of riders who, I know how to ride, I don't need to tell me how to ride, and so there's a lot of very poor riders out there. They don't realise that just a little bit of rider training could create a huge improvement in their riding skills and their level of safety. So I'm always delighted when I see a more mature and more experienced rider who is humble enough to admit that they need more training and that there's room for improvement in their riding. Because believe me, there's room for improvement in all of our riding all the time. So anyway, I've gone on quite a bit. So I hope this video has inspired you to learn more, and possibly to seek out some motorcycle training in the area where you live. These days there are many fun, wonderful opportunities for all sorts of rider training, and the great thing is that most of them are fun. You can have a great time, you can learn lots of new skills, and you can make yourself a safer rider at the same time. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. So please, ride safe, enjoy your riding, and let's get out there and have some fun. Bye.